Okay, we're live.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanne Kirkus. I'm coming to you from my very crowded home office, but I am surrounded today by all my beloved books, many given to me by my librarian friends and colleagues over the years. I enjoyed a 43-year career in public education before retiring, and I have to say that one of my greatest personal and professional gifts was having the pleasure of overseeing the South Brunswick library media program, and I did that for over a decade. And so it became sort of a running joke that I would refer to myself as a pseudo-librarian, and I actually think I convinced myself that I was. But I have to tell you that up until this day, I still feel a kinship with my librarians. And so it feels very natural for me today, and also it's a great honor to moderate the panel that I'll be leading this morning. It's called Leading from the Librarian Admin Perspective. So let me begin by saying that to lead from the library is really a tall order. And so to illustrate this, I went into the AASL position statement on librarians as leaders and found over 60 key attributes and characteristics of librarian leadership. So I pulled out just 16, all verbs, just to give you a sense of that tall order. So give a listen. Librarian leaders actively participate, strategically guide, globally understand, commit to equity, seek and promote freedoms. They empower, they champion, they advocate, they leverage, they connect, they collaborate and co-teach. They model, share, serve, network, and transform. Phew, wow, what a list. And this kind of leadership we know takes hard work, but we also know from experience that our librarians are well positioned to rise to this kind of challenge. So today we're going to take a look at librarians as leaders. We're going to look at it in three different ways. Leadership within the walls of the school, that's number one. Number two is leadership beyond the walls of the school, into the community, and leadership in schools without walls, remote. To do this kind of segmented look, we've gathered together a panel today of experienced administrators who will offer varying views on why, how, and when such librarian leadership emerges. Their bios are listed on the hub, but I really wanted to do a quick intro of each because I think I wanted to highlight their admin experiences, which are very different and unusual. So I'm going to work in alphabetical order for this. I'm going to start with Bonnie Cates. Hi, Bonnie. Bonnie is the principal and lead learner of Crossroads South Middle School in South Brunswick Township, where she has also served over time as an assistant principal, director of PD, principal of Cambridge Elementary, and when I first came to know her, music teacher. Among her many points of pride is the work Bonnie has done in the area of social justice and her co-authoring of the blog Hearty Leadership. And I like the phrase that goes after it. Leadership is hard work, but leadership is heart work. So welcome, Bonnie. Now we have Mark Daniels. Hi, Mark. Mark is an educational leader and superintendent of the East Windsor Regional School District. Over the course of his 25 years, Mark has also served as assistant superintendent, director of human resources, principal at elementary and middle levels, and teacher. Mark, were you social studies teacher?
No, it was elementary teacher.
Elementary, okay. And Mark is an ardent advocate for equitable educational opportunities for students. It's his hallmark. Next, we have Joseph Malash. Did I get that right, Joe? I think
That's
I did.
right. Yes.
Joe is the superintendent of the Cherry Hill School District, which is a national district of character. In his 30-year career, Joe taught humanities and English, served as principal at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. He's been a director of curriculum, an assistant superintendent. Notably, Joe was the 2019 NJASL Administrator of the Year. and I know how special that is, Joe.
Yes.
And add to that, he recently has been named the 2021 New Jersey Superintendent of the Year by the New Jersey Association of School Administrators. And Joe, that is a big deal. So congratulations and kudos to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sandra Paul. Hi, Sandra. After that whole debate on Sandra versus Sandra, Sandra is the Director of Information Technology and Operations for the Township of Union. Previously, Sandra served as the Chief Technical Officer in Sayreville, and she was a director and a computer science and business education teacher. Among her many accomplishments, and believe me, she has a wonderful list of points of pride. I have picked out these. She was named the 2007 NJASL Administrator of the Year.
Yes.
She has been on the list of the top 30 technologists, transformers, and trailblazers in 2015. Love that title. And she's also on the list of the top most social K-12 tech leaders on Twitter.
Yep.
So welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And additionally, I can tell you that each one of these administrators are here because they have walked the walk and know the power and potential that can come from strong administrative librarian partnerships. They really get it. So here's the format we're going to be following. I'm going to put before the panelists 3 or 4 questions. All of the questions are founded on premises that I have pulled from the AASL position paper on librarian leadership. Some of the questions will be answered by all and some by choice. And audience members, we will likely not have a whole lot of time for questions. Maybe we will, we don't quite know, because we have a lot to say. But we do want to hear from you. So feel free to post your comments under the Q&A section so that we can see your thinking along the way. We'd love to hear what's going on in your mind as you listen to us chat here this morning. All right, so with that, I'm going to jump right in and I'm going to head toward that first topic, which I mentioned was going to be librarian leadership within the walls of a school. And I'm now talking brick and mortar school or hybrid. Doesn't matter whether the walls are virtual or whether they're brick and mortar, but you are within the school. So for the panelists, let me frame the question for you. And again, I'm framing this through the AASL position on librarian leadership. Through active involvement in the life of a school, librarians can be seen as effective school-based leaders in areas that range from curriculum to culture. Their scope is broad, their reach is wide, and so it begs the question, why are some librarians seen as leaders and others are not? I mean, why is that? So here's the question. Now there's 2 sides to this story, so we're going to approach the question in a 2-pronged manner. Part 1, what do administrators need to do to pave the way for librarian leadership to happen? You know, what is it we have to do to pave the way and remove the obstacles so that leadership can occur? And along with that, what responsibility does a librarian have for building upon the pathway that you begin to sort of eke out for him or for her? So that's the question. What's the administrator's responsibility? What's the librarian's responsibility in building this leadership pathway? Now, here's the challenge. I'm going to be looking for a 2-minute response. I was going to bring my my egg timer or some kind of timer or a book, but I'll trust you to time yourselves. 2-minute response. I think I'm going to ask this of each of you, and I'm going to go in reverse alphabetical order and call on each of you for response. So, Sandra, I ended with you alphabetically. I'm going to begin with you and ask for your response. What do you think?
Well, one of the things I think to facilitate as for me as an administrator for the librarians is to actually facilitate the conversation with the building principal or the administration in the building, you know, make sure, like, say, for instance, figure out how to, have collaborative meetings with the librarian and the building administrator. Because one of the things also that I find happening is there's a misunderstanding exactly what a librarian or media specialist does inside the library. They don't realize the resources and the importance of the librarian. And I also think it's a misunderstanding that if we are in an information age, an age that's using information and literacy and reading, how can you not have the librarian to be part of that conversation? You have to have the librarian as part of that conversation, because they are actually the ones that are in the, as you would say, the groundwork in doing this. So because of that, that's one of the things. So to open up the pathway for a librarian to become a leader in their building or even online is making sure we facilitate the conversations. The other side of it also is to make sure that it is understood how important they really are. One of the things that I've done over the years is actually place certain responsibility as a librarian so that there is no choice but to go to the librarian in order to get the answers. So, like say for instance, in one of the school districts I worked in, was the librarian had all the passwords. So if you needed a password for a service, you had to go to the librarian. So it kind of forced the issue, but you know what I mean? It was one of those things that I think is so important. And I think that's what also has to be understood, is that the librarian is not the book in the shelf inside the library. The person is actually a massive resource. I think the library and the librarian should be the heart of the entire building, because it's so important to have them. And I think over the years, I've seen such a disservice of the loss of the librarian. And I think it's also reflected in looking at some schools' reading scores, their, literacy and everything else. And right now it's even more vital because the combination of technology and being able to be literate with technology. So that's where I see it. I think the conversation has to take place, and I think it's important for an administrator to advocate for librarians.
Okay, that wonderful responses. We hear from you the necessity of that conversation, of placing importance on the library media specialist by giving them responsibilities that create that felt need and that sense of importance. And I love your description of librarians as massive resources. That's just wonderful. So Joe, I'm going to move over to you.
Thanks, Joanne, and thanks, Sandra. And I agree with Sandra about what she talked about. I think as administrators, whether it's a building principal or assistant principal, supervisor, district level, superintendent, we have to pave that way. We need to take out all of the extraneous things that would get in the way of a librarian accessing what she needs or what he needs, whether it's time, whether it's resources in terms of funding, or just resources in terms of supplies. One of the most powerful things that I think an administrator can do is truly listen. There needs to be set times that the administrators can and will meet with the librarian. You need to find out, what is she thinking? Where is she going? What are her peers talking about? In our school district, we're incredibly fortunate. We have 21 librarians in 19 schools. And the librarians are a central part of what goes on at the school level and at the district level. We write curriculum. Librarians are involved in the curriculum committees, because it doesn't matter whether you're doing science or social studies or English. How can you not do it without having a librarian involved? So administrators need to be able to listen. They need to be able to sit down and say, in what direction are we going? And those things need to be set. There needs to be a regular time. It can't just be, by happenstance that we were passing, or the administrator stopped in the library to say hi and have an offhand conversation. No. But it needs to be something that is structured. When decisions are made, and that planning takes place during the course of the summer, or even during the course of the year, it needs to be purposeful and it needs to be structured to be included. It's not just something that's on the side. In so many ways, really, if you go, we're in such a technological age now. If you really look at it, librarians in an educational setting are truly the original influencers. you know, in any school. And it doesn't matter whether it's an elementary school or preschool or up through the collegiate level, but truly the original influencers are librarians. And I think there was a time in educational administration and in schools that people forgot that. And people forgot what the true value of a librarian is and the difference that she can make in the school. Now, what does a librarian have to do? They have to seize that opportunity. They have to step forward. They have to insert their voice. The value of professional voice to guide what goes on in a school and to truly make a difference for kids cannot be discarded. And the librarian's voice, as I said, is going to permeate every grade level, every subject area. So we need to make sure that that voice is heard and is nurtured. But the librarian has a responsibility in and among what she does to make sure that she is stepping forward and saying things, or that he moves forward into a situation and inserts himself to say, well, I know that there's a committee that's getting together to talk about cultural proficiency, or to talk about something that we're doing as a school. I need to be a part of that, or I need to be able to provide resources, and here's what I can offer, and here's what I can do. Librarians are central. I can't imagine having a school without a librarian in it. And I know, unfortunately, there are some schools that are in that situation. And I hope that New Jersey gets to the point that they realize that and they pass legislation to say there's got to be a librarian in every school, because I think that's central to what we're doing moving forward. Our librarians can show that and can demonstrate that on a daily basis, on a yearly basis within their schools.
Wow, Joe, such great insights. You know, lots of head nodding among the panelists. I'm watching comments flow in, all saying, you know, sort of I second that motion, particularly the notion of librarians as original influencers. What a great image. But also the reminder, although there are things we can do as administrators to really do that promotion,
Yes.
the librarian has to be there ready to step forward and
Yes.
itself, and there you have it. There you have
Yes.
the magic, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo much of what Sandra and Joe shared. I think that from an administrative standpoint, I think from a district lens, I think it has to start there, because I think we have to kind of reset and recalibrate, but also redefine what we believe the strength of a library media specialist brings to a school district. I found that good intentions, well-meaning individuals sometimes feel like librarians are just very expendable, especially when we talk about making budgetary decisions. Fortunately, I just think we have to prioritize the role, but in order to do that, we have to have a good understanding of what that role is. And I think once you have a sense of what that value is, when we talk about, you know, this information age that we live in and the level of resources, I like to coin the terminology, you know, librarians are the hub of a school. I know someone else probably made that up, but I act like I did. Okay, so I had a conversation the other day with one of my supervisors who's actually tagged to the librarians in our district. She used the terminology, the heart of the school, which I love, right? But they are the nucleus because they're connected, they cross content, and especially in this day and age where information is so plentiful, and we need to really instruct our staff as well as our students regarding how to kind of curate that and filter that. You know, our librarians have so much benefit that I don't want to ever underutilize them. I think that when I go back to philosophically what we think they represent, I think Sandra talked about, you know, folks viewing the librarian as not a book on the shelf. And I think if administratively, oftentimes we bring some of our own experiences to the table. If we narrow the scope of what we think a librarian is, oftentimes we're going to narrow their possibilities within that school environment. So I think we do have to make sure they're an integral part of what we do. As a principal, I valued having the librarian really just be connected, right, in very intentional ways, whether it was via supervisors, whether it's via any PD initiatives we had happening within the school. There was an understanding that the librarian was a key piece of that. Now, that was part of the philosophy that I would say that the district actually promoted, because the other part I'll say is, outside of making sure that the principal has routine opportunities to meet with the librarian, I would go a step further and say at the district level, there needs to be some entity that's also galvanizing and kind of articulating what that vision is. So therefore, at the building level, it's reinforced. And I think if you don't have that, sometimes it can be an ambiguous message sent. so I just think that recognizing that hub mindset, and as a principal and as a superintendent, I would continue to articulate the hub mindset, because I do believe that that's figuratively, but it should be literally how we function. I worked in a school where the library was actually in the middle of the school. So it was literally the hub, and you could enter it from many different places. In terms of the librarian's role, look, I think it's related. I think if the district has an approach and a philosophy and a level of recognition for the work that needs to be done, I think you then will have the librarians that understand that and will find opportunities to advocate. And I'll just give an example. We talk about building goals, district goals. An example will be a librarian. We don't even have to say to the librarian, here's where we're going. The librarian taps into those needs, those anticipated needs of the school community, and then engages with a department, a grade level, to say, here are some resources that I think will support you, teachers. Here are some things that your students will benefit from. So you kind of create this relevance. It's not a forced relevance, but it's a relevance. And another aspect is just recognizing that no matter what we have to address, the librarian is one of those key pieces, right? Those key support mechanisms to drive the mission of the school. So I could go on for a lot longer than this. I'm going to stop there, but I just think that it's a combination of administratively, from a leadership standpoint, recognizing the need, and then therefore creating those pathways for the librarian to be well understood within the school community. And I don't want to leave it only on the librarian to do that. Administratively, we have to make sure that that's understood, but it does fall on the librarian to recognize the needs and kind of pick up on that, but also offer their support to the school community in a way that clearly is in line with what people need. So vital to the school community.
Excellent. Mark, you really speak to your vision of the library and librarian as hub, heart, central. You and I happen to principal in the same school 2 different times, but the creator of that building understood that the library was central and made it so that you had to walk through the library to get from one end to the other. What a great idea. But a really good librarian will be alert to every single person that travels through and jump on that as an opportunity. So great vision. And Bonnie, we'll finish up with you on this first question. Where do you stand?
So first, I'd like to say that I'm incredibly humbled and honored to be part of this group. What you've heard so far is unbelievable, and just wonderful visions for librarians and the library itself. And I would echo, again, using Mark's word, echo everything that everyone has said. As a building principal, if I just look at it from that lens, my job is to make sure that I recognize and see the power of the librarian. We have to know and advocate for that position. Even with central office, we have to make sure that we're advocating for the need, because if we get asked, and I noticed somebody in the chat put a librarian's more than covering a duty, and that broke my heart. I mean, I can't even imagine that that's what would be seen. But as the principal, we have to make sure that the role is absolutely seen as vital and important and needed throughout the building. I think one of the other things that the principal can do to pave the way for leadership is to give those opportunities. And I'm going to say it in a little bit of a different way. It's the partnership that we create as a team, and making sure that we give those opportunities for the librarian to lead, to be part of building goals, to be part of the conversations that are happening. And I also believe we have to listen. When the librarian comes to you and says, I have an idea, you have to be willing to listen. And I think one of the greatest things that we can do is make sure that we encourage, and I believe Joe said this, you get every obstacle out of the way. Mm-hmm. So we have a great initiative. I think Joanne in South Brunswick, you started this, the One Book Initiative, where we all read one book. And there's lots of little ideas that will pop up, and that's very exciting. And instead of micromanaging it, I want that librarian to shine, and I want the whole school to see them shine. I want the community to see them shine. I want the kids to see that they're central to that. And I think sometimes administrators just need to step back a little bit and give that shining moment to the librarian so everybody can see how valued they are. When you have that, if you have that powerful partnership with your librarian, the second part of the question is, what's the responsibility of the librarian? And I would say to any librarian out there, no matter what relationship you have, continue to build it with your admin, but you have that responsibility to build it. Don't wait to be asked. Go ask and join. Go and say, hey, I noticed the building goal is X, Y, and Z. I can add to that. As you've heard from my colleagues here, the power of the librarian, the hub, the original influencer. I love that. You have all of that. So then have your voice be heard. And I would say just put your voice out there and continue to ask and continue to include yourself in as much as possible, and build connections and relationships with your colleagues around the building so that they can't imagine doing any project without you or any event without you, because you are critical.
Beautifully said, Bonnie. And I think you put a great, let's say, period to the end of this very long sentence that we've been building, because I think one of the big takeaways there is, once you have put librarians in position of importance and power, and you've listened and you've helped create direction, you move out of the way. And there's a phrase that says, learn to bask in the reflected glory. You stand to the side and the glory comes to the librarian, and you just bask in all the good stuff. So wonderful. And in great segue to second topic, I want to take a look at librarian leadership beyond the walls of the school and into the community at large. So once again, I'm going to frame the question from the ASL position statement. School librarians connect beyond the walls of their schools to lead and learn with others in their district, community, state, evidence this conference, across the nation, around the world. So that's said, this is a two-part question. As administrators, why should you be encouraging your librarians to get involved with the broader community and with their profession, such as this conference? Why should you be encouraging such interactions? And part two, how does the work beyond the walls of the school that librarians are engaged in right now this weekend enhance a librarian's capacity to lead within the walls of the school? How does the outside involvement enhance the inside leadership? Really a sort of a two-part question. And this time I've decided to ask for a response from each of you. I'm going to go in geographical order. I think I'll start in North Jersey. And Sandra, I'm going to start again with you, because I think you're the northernmost of us all in Union. And so what do you think?
Well, one of the things that I think basically the collaboration with the librarian and the public library and the community and everything else, it happens very well in my school district. It so happens that one of our librarians is on actually the board. She represents our superintendent at the public library. So it was kind of neat. Yeah, she's an amazing lady. And one of the things that I think that's really great is that collaboration, being that she's there representing our superintendent of schools, it's great to have her there so that the communication that takes place between what's happening in school plus what's happening into our community is wonderful. And it gives an opportunity for both the kids in school to realize what's also there in the public library, but also in the public arena. And another thing that also happened is that there are several of my librarians that actually, one of the things, one started the entire process, was that started looking into this whole thing, because we don't have walls anymore, because I don't know if most of you know, Union is completely remote learning, and started the entire process about ebooks, and went out there and started looking into trying to get it done. And then all of a sudden then the school district started saying, oh, we need more ebooks. And I'm like, okay, all right. So they were the first people I referred to. And I'm like, okay, let's get them all going and everything else. And that's how it works, is because the influence that the librarian has, both from within within and without the entire of the community that I serve in Union, has been amazing, because now we have services that we provide, basically, that gives ebooks for students using the public library system, and ebooks that we have within our school district. So it's, a matter of a conversation that took place between what was needed and everything else. So, it's, the communication keeps going. And prior to this closed down pandemic, everything, we were actually having meetings with our public librarians in our school libraries, or we were going to the public library having that conversation. So it's one of those things that I find that that form of collaborative work, and actually having that person also on the board of our public library, is able to communicate to all of us within our school district what the public library is doing, but she's able to communicate what we as a school district would like to be with the public library. And globally, the influence is amazing, because, we've had authors in, we've had all these, and especially, authors talking about equity, diversity, inclusivity, all these things. It's been amazing. And that's the reason it's so important to have a librarian in your school. It is important to do that. We can't be doing this. We have to do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So from there, I'm going to move into Central Jersey. Bonnie, I'm going to come to you next.
All right. So I'm a huge fan of the education social media push that's been out there. I don't really do a lot with the social part in terms of pop culture, but in terms of the educational side and really expanding beyond the walls, I think it's critical. And the question of why should we encourage our librarians is, as you mentioned in my bio, I was a music teacher, and in these positions we're often singletons in a building, and sometimes it can be a lonely job. Funny, principal too, it can be a lonely job when you're the only. And it's critical for those singletons, including the librarians, to be able to learn and grow from each other. And they can't just do it with social media. Social media is amazing. Twitter, all of this kind of organization, these kinds of opportunities, they're wonderful, but it really is important to go beyond the walls, see what's going on in the world around you. I also think that we can get pretty insular with our own community and the issues our community faces. And it's important for our librarians, as that hub of information and bringing resources to our kids, to know what's going on beyond our community and our schools, and to be able to provide opportunities to connect them with other initiatives, global initiatives, things like that. So I really think it's important for a building administrator to always encourage that. Again, partnerships with the public libraries. We have an incredible partnership with our public library, other librarians, and then beyond. I also think it's critical for librarians to visit each other's schools and their libraries. Go visit somebody's home. Couple years ago for a PD day, we had the wackiest thing where we actually reached out, we reached out to all these other schools, and I sent the teachers in the morning to tons of other schools, wherever they wanted to go. I set up some connections and they set up some connections. In the afternoon, we learned what it was like to visit somebody else's home and what could we do to get better and stronger. And everybody talks about that day as a critical moment. So for the librarians out there, go visit each other's spaces, spend an hour, 2 hours, walk around, feel that when we're allowed to. Right now you can do it virtually on websites. And I think I sort of answered the second half is, how does the outside work enhance the inside work? And it just always makes us stronger when we do the work together. And being a singleton, it's hard. It's very hard. But when you when you have these partners with you, it just makes you so much stronger. I do the same thing as a principal where I try to get out there and see as many people, created connections with people from all different kinds of states, or all different states. And it's really been great. And I think it's made me stronger and made my school stronger. So I encourage librarians to do that. And that'll give you ideas to come back to your leaders with, and just make you even stronger.
Terrific. So let's move a little further down the state, Mark. I think you come up next.
Okay. So look, I think that as educators, collaboration clearly is a non-negotiable. In order for us to grow, we must connect with others. As much as, I have amazing ideas by myself, speaking with others, learning from others, stealing from others is how we grow. And oftentimes just a conversation between two professionals in similar roles, I'm always learning something from the other person. Even today, I'm going to gain something from this conversation we're having now. So, Bonnie said it well. In the role of a librarian, they are singletons. I'm going to start from a district standpoint. We need to make sure that we are intentional about ensuring that our librarians have opportunities for articulation within the district. Let's make sure we get that accomplished. And of course, we should be encouraging them to connect with individuals outside of the school district. I think that's where those ideas are generated. That's where those relationships are cultivated. And oftentimes when we talk about librarians kind of being that resource hub, that informational hub, that's kind of where they're pulling from, right? They have a sense of what the needs are. And as they engage in those interactions outside those walls, that's where they start to find those solutions and the things that they think can fit within the school district. So that's, to me, is it's tough that, I get why this is a question. And it's actually, in my role, it's making me reflect that I need to make sure that we are kind of just prioritizing the importance of that level of professional growth, that we need to make sure that happens. The why, should we do it? It makes us better. It helps it supports our staff. It supports our students. I like to make sure that we keep that as our focal point, right? All the work we do should contribute to the growth of our students and supporting their educational needs. So I think, to me, I would be disappointed if all districts were not prioritizing that for their librarians. And like I said, I think it's something that once again goes back to philosophically, how are we viewing the role of the school librarian? And I think once we kind of have a good sense of what that definition is, these other aspects become more commonplace. These are educational professionals that have huge value within our school communities. And the same conversations that we were having regarding teachers, attending workshops and collaborating with peers, it should be exactly the same, if not a heightened need for our librarians.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, we're going to finish this up with you.
Sure. Thanks, Joanne. And again, I will agree with what my peers have said. So important to get beyond just the confines for educators, beyond the confines of the school walls. Even as far as we've come in 2020, too often without encouragement and without discussion, it can still feel like a one-room schoolhouse. The way that unfortunately some folks approach it, and honestly, the way that some folks in the community view it. And I think that's, this kind of ties into the first question as well, about why it's so important, for that librarian's voice and for the vision and to be able to see what is going on, so that people are aware. But those walls have to not exist. I will tell you that I think administratively, superintendents, building principals, supervisors, folks in general, very rare is it that I think that we find an individual administrator who's got a strong background or was a librarian. They have an understanding from their perspective as a teacher or what their role had been about what a librarian does. And this becomes, again, why it's so important for administrators to listen, and to find out what it is that the librarian is actually thinking. I will tell you that in my experience in the 30 years or so that I've been involved in public ed, librarians are a group of educators, and educators are connected people. Librarians are probably more connected than most, just because of the nature of the work. So again, I think that administratively, we have to find that out. somebody in the chat, I think, mentioned about the Board of Education. I think this is an important role, and something I will tell you in Cherry Hill we need to do a better job of is making sure the Board of Education has an understanding about what our librarians do. Whether it's through presentation or whether it's through information that's directly shared about what takes place, how to be able to highlight that in terms of what goes on. We enjoy an incredible relationship with Cherry Hill Public Library. Laverne Mann is our library director. And she's a wizard, in terms of what she does and how she operates, and her team. And her team members, the librarians are interconnected with what goes on in our schools. Our librarians introduce our staff and our students to the library. We've been able to do library cards across the entire grade levels of children, to make sure that they have access to the library. And even more so now that it's electronic and that the accessibility is there. Librarians will come out to our schools. Such an important piece, and I think something that exists in so many communities. I will tell everybody to make sure that that is a focus. And if there's not a strong local library system, then with the county system or with the state library system, there are always folks out there. There are always additional librarians that can help with schools and to help to connect. Again, I think something that's incredibly important, and I think teachers will thrive on that connection. One of the things that I've seen through the course of the spring into the summer and now through the fall, that our librarians have opened up the door, is additional connections with authors, which becomes such an incredibly important piece, as well as with museums. When you talk about access, equity, and opportunity, is so pivotal right now, because there are children, because of opportunity that they have in their own homes, have lots of things at their fingertips. Our librarians have opened up those doors to make it where the access is equitable across our district. Our children have devices, our children have connectivity, to make sure that they do have access to authors, they do have access to the museums, they do have access to those opportunities that would normally be for some first graders or second graders or third graders the first time that they'd ever been in a museum, first time that they had ever been offsite and seen something that is different. And I think so incredibly important, and something that cannot be lost in the time in which we are dealing right now.
Right. I think if the folks who are listening probably certainly heard, starting with Sandra, and Mark, the importance of the in-district communication, the importance of the connection to the public library system, whether it be local, county, or state. And Bonnie, you mentioned the social media, the importance of visits to others. And Joe, you finished us off with taking us broadly to all kinds of connections that were far beyond probably what we could have possibly even imagined until these last several months. So, but I think all of those do help break up that notion of the one room schoolhouse type feeling, the isolation, the egg crate feel that you're sort of like in your place and alone. Oh no. Very much connected, and so lots of great examples. So that really leads us very nicely to the last topic, which is librarian leadership without walls. I was thinking about doctors without borders, so now I'm thinking librarians without borders, completely remote. Here's the frame. School librarians are prepared to provide transformational leadership. By way of example, they should be able to pivot at a moment's notice and deliver their program remotely. Now, this is no small feat, because they, along with really all others, but particularly specialists, need to do a few things. They need to show fidelity to their program. They need to further their mission and goals. They need to maintain high visibility and watch for ways to deepen their programmatic value. I always worry that in times like this, a valued program might start to become invisible. And so many believe that the librarian is very much positioned to be a lead and a go-to resource in a remote environment, that this could be a time for librarians to shine. So from your administrative perspective, and this will be the last question I ask of all of you, what is one way a librarian could take a transformational lead at this time? And I'd like to hear from all of you. We can go in any order, so you can someone can just begin. Whoever would like to speak.
I'll jump in.
There you go, Bonnie.
I think I'll have to say the librarians in our district have been unbelievable as a group. And also, I'll specifically say, you know, the librarian in my building, I think she's on this call now. We gave her an added challenge of renovating the library. Joanne, you have to come see
Oh,
it. No more green carpet.
oh,
See it. But renovating the library in the middle of it, and it's a tiny renovation. It was just a carpet change, but she capitalized on that opportunity to rework the space so that the physical space when kids come in is going to be so much more inviting in that hub and opening the doors. I felt like Frozen Elsa, just let the doors open. Not Elsa, but whichever one it is. You know what I mean. What I would say though, with all of this is that in remote, it was very challenging. But one of the things that we did is we did curbside pickup. We quickly found out that Alexandria, and I say we, it really wasn't me, so I've got to take myself out of that. She did curbside pickup, Linda, and would talk about books with kids, jump into classes, jump into Zoom lessons. Quickly, she was reaching out to me to say, please put in your newsletter that I have these resources and these tools for teachers. And the teachers were like, oh my goodness, I need this digital resource, or do you have this in a digital format because of the remote world? And she put herself right out there, and she had to be just a hair above everybody or ahead of everybody else, but did that. So I think that's one of the great strengths that I would see. I'm going to be a little shorter this time so everybody else can go.
okay. Excellent, Bonnie. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll jump in. I'll just reiterate that I think in this remote environment that we're in, it just speaks to the notion of when we're looking at resources, we know teachers have been faced with a pretty significant challenge in terms of having to kind of recreate a lot of their lessons in delivering them and engaging in different ways, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, and we're pulling on resources, and we know there's a finite amount of time to gather those resources. So our librarians have been crucial in terms of providing those resources, curating those resources, not only for teachers, but also for our students and families. A lot of our families, as we know, have been co-facilitating as of late. And our librarians have been vital in terms of offering those resources in a very easily accessible way. As Bonnie talked about, we've been doing, keeping the library alive here, whether it's through curbside pickup or some digital opportunities. But I do think this is one of those moments where, and I go back to, and I'm being a little redundant, but I think it goes back to the notion of if we have a clear sense of what we believe our librarians' value is, this is just one of those examples where you're saying, oh my goodness, we've got a non-traditional educational approach right now. And this is where we definitely need to lean on our librarians, especially from a digital resource standpoint. And I think that our librarians are aware of that, and they can clearly see how they can kind of fill those voids and fill those gaps and bridge those opportunities between right now. We talk about home and school where things are somewhat blurred, but I think right now is a great opportunity for really just bringing to the surface some things that we may have had in existence. Whether it's databases, or whether the case should be, some things we may not have taken full advantage of. Maybe we took it for granted in some ways. And this is a great time for our librarians to step in and step up and really just support the educational experience in this unique time. So I just think this is just another opportunity. I know in our district, it's been, we went through, I'm approaching the end of my second year. When I arrived here, I think out of 6 schools, I think we had maybe 3 librarians. I think we right now have 6. We've got a librarian at every school. So some folks are further along than others as it relates to establishing their role and their presence. But we also have a supervisor directly connected to our librarians who can kind of shepherd that work and create that level of understanding. So I do feel like we're moving in the right direction, but I do recognize, and it's been very noticeable during this time, the librarians have been a great support to the school community.
Wonderful.
Joanne, and just to add to what Mark and Bonnie have already talked about, I think that, again, comes back to the opportunities that are there that are set in front of us. You know, that we often talk about the challenges, especially that we are all facing right now over the course of the last 9 months. You know, in the revolutionary changes that are going on, or the transformational piece the librarians can step into. And I think that one of the big things to always highlight is the fact that librarians are ready. It's been an evolution of what the work has been that have gone on in our libraries and in our schools, in the natural role that all of these folks fill, you know, in our schools, in our districts, and then in our community, that has continued to evolve. So in a time of crisis like the one that we are experiencing, you know, administratively, again, it's our responsibility to turn and to look to those people. I do not have all the answers. I don't have most of the answers, I will tell you. In a community here would probably tell you I don't have any of the answers. But you know, that's where we have to turn, and we have to listen. And listen to these people who are the experts. You know, seize upon their background, seize upon their knowledge, seize upon the connectivity that they have among their peers, among an organization such as this, to say this is what will work for kids. Again, I go back to the comment that I made earlier about librarians being the original influencers. You know, so often that has been done behind the scenes, you know, and below the surface. Librarians have to step up. As administrators, we have to step out of the way and boost them. You know, it's not about I'll stand behind you and support you. I'll stand next to you and hold your hand, and we will pull through this together. And I think that's so incredibly needed right now, especially as we get into this winter, you know, and see what it's going to look like over the course of the next couple of months. Librarians are shining. Administratively, we need to make sure that we highlight that and shine the light on them, because again, ultimately, the most important thing for all of us is that children are going to benefit. If we can do this together, children are going to benefit. Again, go back to the access, equity, and opportunity. We have to make sure that we are providing that for all children, and all has to mean all. You know, and librarians, I think, are central in that role.
Beautifully said. Sandra, do you want to close this up?
Well, the one thing that I do want to say is that being that we've gone to remote learning or in a virtual environment, I would like this to be stated is that librarians have been doing this forever. They started it. You know, I don't know when it changed that we started having to have technology separated, but the librarians were the first that started the entire technology thing. They're the first people with makerspaces, which is the entire concept of design thinking. The librarians have been doing this for years. The problem is that it was never recognized. And the thing is that we in a virtual now and remote learning environment have to recognize it now. There's no choice. And the thing is that because they've been doing this all these years, they've honed their skills to make it very much appropriate for what they're doing. So because of that, the librarian that's the reason why it's so important to have the librarian in the school, because, you know, they've been doing this. They've been doing this for years. And all we need to do is either, to be honest with you, get out of the way, or try and get them down that path. You know, it's like recently I am actually going to be presenting to my board coming up about the importance of what my librarians are doing for remote learning. And because of that, one of the things is that understanding that they've been doing it for years, and we just now need to bring them to the forefront. Yeah, I've been a director of technology for too many years. And I've supervised librarians many times during that year. And the reason why is because they've been doing this and they know what's needed. We just need to get them out there to stand up and be in front and realize that they're the ones that are, you know, they have it, they know it. And the thing about a librarian, they have no problems researching it. You know, none of us basically have time. It's just like Joe said, we don't know everything, right? But they can find it. And unfortunately, and one of the great things, I love the post that I've seen. Google can give you 140,000 answers, but if you go to the librarian, they can narrow it to exactly what you're looking for. So to me, that's what the librarian is for, and that's what's so important for them as leaders. So I think it's so important for us to really get them in the forefront, get them in front of people, realizing that how important they really are.
Mhm. So if I thread together everything you've responded to this last statement, it basically is move our librarians, help guide our librarians to the forefront. Librarians step up. Administrators step away, but not leaving the librarian there, just into the shadows. Be part of the shadow team and the support team. Shine the light on them, and then we bask in their glory, because we know, as all of us are, we are such believers in librarian leadership. You can hear it from each of us. We know there is much glory here to celebrate. So I'm going to bring this panel to a close. I'm going to finish with offering a wish, but panelists, in just a couple of words, and I didn't ask you to prepare this, but if you had one wish to leave folks with, one wish, one wishful thought, real quick, what would it be? And I'm going to go back to alphabetical order, and Sandra, I'm going to start with you. Again.
Yeah. My wish is basically because in my school district, I don't have a librarian per building, and I need it. I need it so badly. And I just wish basically it was understood how important librarians are, not only for our schools, our school district, for our community, for our state, but globally understanding how important they really are. Because the thing is that we are no longer in an industrial age of making a widget. We are in an age of information, and librarians have been doing it for years. Why not use that resource or have them at the forefront for the information age?
Okay, working my way back up the list, Joe.
Honestly, I would say my wish is that, to people to look at just this conference overall, the name of it, right? Lean into leadership. And my wish is that everybody that's listening and is participating will actually and authentically do that. Will lean in, become better connected, and truly make that difference for the kids in their school, for their peers, for the staff, and for the community. Because that's the thing that's really going to draw us through.
Mark.
I'll just say that, leadership is not just determined by title. And I think that sometimes we overlook the impact that members of our school communities bring to the table. And I think our librarians clearly can fall into that category at times if we don't have a strong sense of their value. And I think, Joe talked about listening. I think we have to listen, but we also have to make sure those of us that do have these titles with leadership, I wish that we would be able to make sure that we can clearly define and articulate and support the role of our librarians.
Thank you. And Bonnie.
I share these wishes. It's hard to pick one. I share all of these same wishes. I wish for all of you that you can build that partnership with whether it's one student, one parent, one family, one teacher, one admin, one district person, one person outside of your walls. But I wish that we can continue to build these partnerships and see that librarian as the hub, and the partnerships come off of that.
So I will finish now with a quick quote, a bit of thanks, a reminder, and my wish. So the quote I'm taking from Dr. Scott Beck from the non-negotiable role of school librarians. And he writes about librarian leadership, but he ends his article with a clarion call to administrators. And so I share this with you now. Fellow administrators, take some time to familiarize yourself with the AASL standards and consider the culture of deep learning that you wish to provide to students. You have a strong asset right in your own backyard. Take a moment to sit down with your teacher librarian, to dream together, and to chart a course. Unlock the power of your library to drive a culture of deep learning in your school And always remember, school is not preparation for real life. School is real life.
Mhm.
At least it should be. And your school librarians can help with that. Now for thanks to the panelists, thank you for being with us today and sharing your thoughts. What a wonderful, beautiful group of like-minded people to be within. I'm surrounded by books and by like-minded people. Absolutely wonderful. To Kim Zito for serving as our quiet co-pilot back there, and of course, Amy Gonzalez for her leadership and guidance in framing this panel discussion. A reminder to all attendees to spend some time visiting those vendors, and the next session begins promptly at 1:15. And finally, my wish to all of you here today, may you be well, may you stay well, and may you find safe passage along that pathway to leadership. So thank you for being with us today, and have a wonderful rest of the day and glorious end to your conference. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.